Welcome. Would you like to introduce your name, course, year, and university?
My name is Georgia Hartley. I go to Bournemouth University and study business studies with marketing, and I'm on my placement year, which is third year.
Can you tell us your hometown?
It's Banbury in Oxfordshire.
Okay. Could you remind us of the course you're currently studying?
So it's business studies with marketing.
Why did you choose your course?
So I always knew that I wanted to do marketing, and both my parents are marketeers, but because I'd never done like straight marketing, I wanted to do like a broader business course, which would allow me to understand different functions. And if marketing wasn't right for me, then I could specialize in something else.
So you're now 3 years into your course.
Yeah.
What have you thought of your course?
I think it's really good because, like I said, it allows you to do learn more about different functions and different aspects of business. And also it's a mix between coursework and exams. So if a student isn't good at exams, then the coursework can help them boost their grade.
Okay. You said you're in your placement year. Could you tell us what your placement year is, what you're doing, and just how you got it? So I'll start off where are you currently on your placement year?
So it's Energizer Holdings, which is an American manufacturer, but they're primarily known for batteries, which is about 80% of the business. But they also work and have a wide portfolio of brands, which work in portable lights and auto care.
And what was the process of you getting this internship?
So I applied for a lot of job roles and internships, but with Energizer, I had just uploaded my CV through LinkedIn, and then I had a telephone interview, and then I got asked to go to an assessment centre, which was down in High Wycombe at their office. And there was sort of 3 main tasks. So there was a marketing presentation, a sales task, which was looking at the Tesco account and picking out key information and data, and then a team exercise.
And then you obviously chose to do the marketing.
Yeah, well, actually so there's 3 roles at Energizer. There's the commercial, the international, and then international marketing, and then local marketing. And the first person that got offered the job got a choice out of the 3, and they chose the commercial role. And then I got asked which one I would prefer out of the marketing ones, and I said the local one. So I got offered the local one, and then the other intern got the international role.
So what is it like working there? What is the kind of the culture, the everyday? Obviously, you went from university now to working kind of a 9 to 5 in an actual job. What's it like?
Well, at first it was really hard because obviously we were working virtually. So other than going to the assessment centre, I've never met anyone in my team. And the first time that I'm going to go to the office is next week, so I've not even seen my desk. But the actual culture is really good. Everyone reached out to us interns, knowing that it was a difficult time to be joining the company. I've had so many opportunities. I've worked across all 3 categories, and I've actually recently changed roles. So I was working on batteries, and now I'm working on auto care. And you really get to lead the project. And I think the job role's more like a marketing executive than an intern. Whereas I think a lot of other companies, they are more like intern based. You're actually part of the company and valued at Energizer.
Hey, if we now did you come from a 6th form or college background?
So I did 6th form.
And what subject/A levels did you take in 6th form?
So I did business studies, sociology, and then photography.
Did any of these subjects help you with your course?
I think they all helped. Like business obviously provides you with that basic knowledge and actually a lot of the theories that you cover in A levels, you also do in first year. So it helps with the step up to university. And then sociology is part of marketing. Like marketing is made up of the 4 social sciences, and sociology is one of them. So that really helped. And then photography was more of like a creative and coursework based subject, but it's really helped me because I understand like things like the rule of thirds, and that's really helped with doing creative stuff for the marketing modules at my course.
What do you think the best A levels are for your course?
Business, definitely. And then I'd probably say if a student picked 2 out of the 4 social sciences, so the social sciences are sociology, psychology, economics, and anthropology. But the 2 out of those 4 that I would recommend is economics and psychology.
Could you answer the university you're currently studying at?
So it's Bournemouth University.
If we go into the best and worst things about studying at Bournemouth University, starting off with the worst.
I don't know. I wouldn't say there's anything particularly bad, but one area that I would say could do with developing would be the medical centre. So the medical centre is it's basically like a doctor's surgery, but they haven't got like specialised doctors there. So you go, most first year students would have to get a bus to get on campus to go, or second year you tend to live in Winton, so that's like a 10-minute walk. And then you have like a 5-minute consultation. And I think with lockdown, it's really helped kind of show that you can do those consultations on the phone. So they quite often, a lot of students have like tonsillitis, but they haven't got a specialised doctor there. So they refer you to another doctor's surgery. So if they did a telephone consultation from now on, that would just save students time and save the doctors time as well.
Anything else bad, or is that pretty much it?
No, I think that's the only thing that needs developing. I think the uni's pretty good. Like the library's really good. The resources, the lecturers. So yeah.
And if we go into the best things about studying at Bournemouth University.
I think the location's really good. But out of the actual university, I'd probably say the lecturers, because they employ lecturers that have worked in, for my course, like business background, so they've got that knowledge and experience, but also some of them are like published and accredited researchers, so that research really helps to connect the theory with the practical.
Okay, if we now go into the Bournemouth accommodation, where did you live in your first year?
So I lived in student accommodation, which was Purbeck House.
What was it like living at Purbeck House?
I think it was really good. I really got on with my flatmates, and the actual accommodation was more of like a party accommodation. So there was always something going on, and they had a good mix of people in there as well.
And your second year?
So second year, I lived in Oxford Point, which is next to Purbeck. And that was a little bit quieter.
And if we compare the two of what it was like living at Purbeck versus Oxford, what would you say the biggest differences were?
So Purbeck was more like louder, and it was, it was more freshers, whereas Oxford Point was a lot quieter and more of a study accommodation.
Okay. If we now go into the Bournemouth area, can you tell us about the Bournemouth nightlife pre-COVID?
So the nightlife, I think, was really good. There was something on every night, literally Monday to Sunday. And I think 2 of the biggest nights was Toast at Revolutions, because that was really cheap. And then there was always a student night for like societies, which was on a Wednesday. So there was always a good mix of nightlife.
And if we go into the shops, for your everyday essentials, so your local supermarkets, maybe your other shops, is it more local or chain?
More chain, I think. So with supermarkets, there's a big Asda, which is near the first year accommodation. And then there's also a Sainsbury's, which is on a retail park, but you have to get a bus to that. And then in town, there's a lot of like Zara, Primark. So a lot more chain stores, I think.
Okay. And if we go into like, restaurants and fast foods, again, is it more chain or is it more local?
I think it's a mix. There's in the town centre, there's a lot of chains. But then as you walk down to the town centre, there's a couple of small businesses like cafes and restaurants.
Okay. What general advice would you give to students about the study at university?
I don't know. I think most people would say like make friends, and I think that's really important. But I think another key bit of advice I'd probably give is it's okay to like make mistakes. Like if you burn your dinner or you don't know how to cook some chicken and you have to call your mum up, like that's okay because you might be 18, but you're still a child and you're becoming an adult. So it's all right to make mistakes because you've got to learn and otherwise you won't grow.
What advice would you give to students about to study at Bournemouth University?
Probably take advantage of the location. Like I'm in my third year and I'm obviously with lockdown and everything, I'm at home. But I really regret never going out and seeing the local area, like going to Sandbanks or even going to like Southampton for shopping. And I think that's something that I want to do in my final year, but I might not have the time, whereas first year you have that time to do it. So make a list and just do it, just go for it.
What advice would you give to students about studying your course at university?
Try hard throughout, like even if it's first year, it might not count for like for your graduate role and for your final year grade. But when you apply for placement, it's really important because it shows what sort of grade you are. And also it's just important because it's that first step and second year is a big jump. So if you don't do well in first year, you might struggle more in second.
Okay. You chose going to university over an apprenticeship / going right into work. What path you to make this choice?
I think the main thing for me was like I was 18 and I was still young. And I have nothing against people that do an apprenticeship, but for me personally, you're doing like a full-time job plus the education side, plus you've got to balance your social life. And I've experienced that this year, even though we've been on lockdown, like my social life's been very little because of that. But I've struggled even doing my coursework and full-time work. So I can't imagine doing an apprenticeship. Like I just wanted to live my life.
Okay. So at this point, I let students have what I like to call a free for all. You can say what you want about what you like. You give advice, you can say something smart, you can say something dumb. Literally, the floor is yours.
I'd probably say just for students, if you're applying for university, look at different universities, but when you actually go, you kind of know which one's right for you. And I remember my A-level like tutor saying, when you get to the right university, you just know. And it's like when you find the right house, you just know. So definitely think about the feel. And I think like weather, definitely think about the weather because you're going to be living there. And the location, like if you don't like the look of the town because it's run down, you might not be happy. And also if you need some like if you need to call your parents or you need some support, don't be afraid to ask because everyone has their down days. Okay. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and this is Plugged In.
And I'm plugged in.
I'm plugged in. Sorry.
Amazing. Thank you.
met